Go na. Hi guys, how's everyone going?
Magandang umaga, Pilipinas.
Is that your tagline? May fan base ka, Gabby. So we have a very short amount of time for this fireside chat, so I wanted to dive right into the good stuff, right? I think most people in this room will be familiar already with your bits and pieces of your story. But for me, one of the highlights in your journey has been how you've been able to really help put the Philippines on the map for international investors and VCs. Take me back to those early days and how difficult that was for you. I mean, were people giving you the time of day back when you were trying to raise money?
Okay, so I've been in tech here out of the Philippines for almost 20 years now. And honestly, raising money for a tech startup as a Filipino company hasn't been easy, right? When I raised money for my last company, it was actually a Filipino company, Surpass, that gave the investment. And I was shut down by almost every major international VC. And the funny thing is, what's changed this, two fundamental things. One is that the global nature of Web3, in that you don't necessarily get kind of a quote-unquote Southeast Asian discount because the work that you're doing is all global. The results are all in one global market for DeFi and NFT. So it doesn't necessarily matter where you came from. And the other one is actually COVID. Very interestingly, most of the top VCs in the US, for example, they would never have invested in a company that didn't have its founder outside of the US. So even if you're a founder with a team in Manila, you had to be in Silicon Valley. They had to be able to drive to your office. And what COVID did was it flattened the world so that you could get into top investors, Zoom slots, basically make your pitch. And they don't care where you're from because everyone is on Zoom. And so the best ideas kind of won out. And yeah, that's kind of a combination of how we got funded.
Wow, something good came out of COVID pala, no? What kind of resistance were you getting? Talk me through some of these rejections. What were you getting told?
So when we were pitching for YGG, we were pitching about the idea that we would basically buy assets in different games like Axie, draw a community to it, and basically lend the assets so that that could result in greater Web3 adoption. Nobody had seen the model before, so we actually got a lot of no's because a lot of the top investors you see today who are investing in NFTs and Web3, they didn't even have an NFT thesis back then, or they were like, I don't understand what you're doing, or you're building on top of what? So they didn't understand the model. And fortunately, we were able to connect with a couple of really good international crypto VCs. One of them is actually here, Ascensive Assets. They've been our supporter from day one. Delphi Digital, which is very well known for backing Axie and AXS token itself. And they understand what they were trying to do. And they were like, okay, yes. So these are people that I didn't really know, but they got the idea, and that's what enabled us to get funded.
So you feel like it was more a problem of you being too early to the game rather than not conveying the idea well enough?
Yeah, definitely, because I've been pitching about NFTs as early as 2018, and we got so many no's from VCs then that are actually really investing now. And being early is it's a tricky balance because you want to be early enough so that you're one of the pioneers of the space. So you could, for example, say that myself or Gio of Axie, Yacht, we're kind of pioneers of the NFT Web3 gaming space. But there was the period in 2018 to 20 that actually was really hard and painful, where we were just trying to survive because there was no market then. And that's what we had to do to get here, was really kind of figure out how to survive the lean years in the last cycle.
Right. I hope you founders out there are taking inspiration from this story. Who would you say gave you your biggest break?
Biggest break. So I think, so funny, I met my first investor, Anil of Delphi Digital, on Twitter, right? So I was tweeting about NFTs 2018 to 20. I was actually doing stuff like breeding, selling axes. I was selling NFT insurance on Rarible, if you guys remember NFT Summer 2 years ago. And Anil of Delphi basically DM me on Twitter saying, hey, that's what you're doing, really cool. I'll give you like complimentary pass to our site. What he didn't know was that I had kind of a pitch in my back pocket for YGG. And I targeted Delphi specifically because I knew that they created the tokenomics of Axie, so they would be one of the few people in the world who understood what I was trying to do. And so I got into a meeting with them. It was Anil, Pierce Kicks.
This is virtual.
Yeah, Zoom, because everyone was just stuck at home back then. And like they got it. They actually helped us kind of really refine the idea of YGG further. And yeah, that's the biggest break I had. So like the moral of that story is that like shoot your shot on Twitter. Sometimes it works.
And always have an elevator pitch in your back pocket. So do you think that after that first big investor, the doors opened wide for you guys?
What happened was that we started building on top of Axie. Most of the people who were running scholarships back then were basically community doing it with their own money. And we were the only ones that basically were able to raise VC to do it. And we did it before Axie really, really took off. And when Axie took off 6 months later, we were basically the only one positioned on top of it. So we rode the Axie wave basically perfectly. And then after we rode that, that's when a lot of other guilds came out and started getting funded.
So it was fantastic timing as well.
Yeah, fantastic timing by sticking around the bad times, because that's the only way you kind of catch the timing to the good times.
Let's talk about the thing that you brought up, the valuation discount, wherein international investors automatically priced purely local startups much lower, no matter the size of your potential home market, right? It's just a fact. How did you, talk us through what you did to get past that, and especially for the founders out here, what they would have to do if they came up against that at the negotiating table?
Yeah, so that was really one of my biggest pet peeves, where people would like look at you a certain way or just discount you a certain way just because you're a founder from the Philippines. And I think in a big way, we've gone past that already, especially when we were validated with investment from A16Z. But there's a couple of things there. One is that there's a big difference between like a Filipino founder or a global founder who happens to be in the Philippines. And you have to be that, right? So it doesn't matter if you're Filipino, if you're not Filipino, if you're living in the Philippines. You should really strive to be a global founder, and that means keeping up with what's happening worldwide in your industry. Now it's a lot easier to do that with like Twitter and Discord, going to events like these where you get to talk to a lot of people, maybe collaborate on some projects. And now it's a lot easier to be able to say, I am a global project founded in the Philippines, doing something really cool. And you get judged basically on the merits of what you're doing. So you shouldn't benchmark yourself by what other people in your city or in your country are doing. You should really strive to be like among the best and benchmark yourself against that.
What was the second thing? Was there a second thing that you were going to say?
Yeah, and then now, because the funding landscape have changed and VCs are a lot more global in nature, there's actually a bit less of that. In Web3, I think in traditional fintech, it probably still exists. But yeah, if you show that the VCs that you're basically like act like a global founder, it doesn't really matter where you are now.
Does the appearance matter when you're doing these pitches?
Well, funny thing is, Web3 is probably the only place where you can get funded without even turning on your camera on Zoom. I mean, of course, everyone knows what I look like, but my co-founder, Owl, who may or may not be here, most people doesn't know what he looked like. And we got funded by one of the biggest VCs in the world with an anonymous co-founder. So I think that was a first for them.
So your third co-founder may or may not be here.
May or may not.
You gotta solve that mystery, guys. Speaking about being a global brand, at the height of the Axie phenomenon, you had teams and players, not just in the Philippines, but also places like Indonesia, Thailand, Brazil, Venezuela even, Colombia. Ultimately, that meant that you were able to market yourself, sell yourself to investors as a global brand, right? Would you say that's still the case? Is YGG still a global brand?
Absolutely. YGG is a global brand. It of course, born and incubated in the Philippines, but it's definitely a global brand.
Do you foresee a time when you would have to move the headquarters out of the Philippines for scale?
Because we're a remote and global company, and everyone can actually live wherever they want. So, for example, YGG itself is a Swiss entity. So, our company is registered. It's actually not a company; it's an association headquartered in Switzerland. And then my co-founders are living between like Europe and the US, and the team is all over. So we do consider ourselves a very global company.
So still very much global in that sense, but founded locally. Last I checked, actually, you had about, what, 15 games under your portfolio and about...
50 plus, yeah, 50 plus.
50 plus now, and roughly, what, $850 million under assets under management, or is that...
I think it's gone down with the market, but yeah, still a pretty significant amount. And yeah, we've bought assets in over 50 games so far, and a lot more in the pipeline.
There's a lot more in the pipeline. Are you at liberty to say?
Well, I guess not the ones that haven't been announced yet, but some of the most recent ones announced. Like we partnered with Digidaigaku, for example, which is CEO is Gabe Dizon, so he's very like veteran of the game industry, and we bought a lot of their NFTs. My Pet Hooligan is something that we've been supporting. They've also been really cool. So there's a lot of really good games in the pipeline, and I think I'm really excited actually for next year because a lot of these games have been under development. They may have released NFTs. People are trading those NFTs, but the games aren't out yet. I think 2023 is when we'll see a lot of the really good content come out.
You guys have made a real effort to try to bring more people into the fold. Talk me through some of your education programs and you know what the goal there is.
Yeah, so the way to think about YGG is that we build our global community, and it's really a decentralized community. We have community managers all over the world, of course, starting in the Philippines. And these community managers are the ones that educate their own sub-communities on how, like, what opportunities are available in Web3. And that means there's a very heavy focus on education. If you were listening to Gio's talk, he was talking about, you know, people learned how to, so that they could play Axie, download the Ronin wallet, play the game, earn SLP, sell that to ETH, withdraw that to probably coins or Binance, turn it into pesos. There's actually a lot of education going along the way. And we think that this education is really key. So there's a couple of initiatives on our end. We partnered with NAS Academy for what we call the Web3 Metaversity. So it's a series of like community-based content courses that people can pay for, or if they're part of the guild, it's actually for free. So they can learn more about Web3. And second is that we're empowering a lot of our community managers and content creators. We have one of our top ones here, Kuku of Level Up Guild. Yeah, Kuku has been like really tireless content creator and educator, and a real, I would say, like bright light for the rest of the community since day one. And we want to be able to enable that. We want to be able to build and train more Kukus, not just in Philippines, but around the world.
Do you find that there's just as much interest in play to earn now that we've exited the pandemic, or has it gone down?
Globally, total game time has not gone down. In crypto, because of where the market is at, people have also left because maybe they want to play somewhere else. Or when crypto prices go down, typically adoption goes down. But what's exciting me is that we've settled at a much higher base than we did 2 years ago or 4 years ago. And then we're building a lot more really good, real product, less speculative, more useful. And ultimately, this is what the space needs to be able to grow long term. Really products that people would want to play and consume and pay for, and like have built real businesses around basically this tokenization of assets. So that's the thing that excites me.
So I sharply focused on the long-term horizon. At this point, I wanted to open up the floor to questions. I can barely see through the spotlight, but if there's anyone who wants to ask questions, please just step up to the mics. Down the hall. I can't really see anything. But yeah, so I'm seeing some people signal, but I can't really see very well. So anyway, so just step up to the mic. Anyways, moving on. for the people here who aren't founders and aren't dreaming to become founders, but want to work in one capacity or another in the metaverse, what advice would you give them? And where are the good jobs?
There's a lot of opportunities in Web3, and what I love the most about it is that you can do it from where you are. You don't have to move to Manila. You don't have to move to Singapore. You don't have to move to San Francisco. You show up online with your crypto wallet, with your skill set, with your ability to contribute to a network, right? Whether it's a guild, it's a game project, it's a DeFi application. All of these need more community members that have skills. So that's ultimately what we're doing as a guild. We're bringing community to Web3. We're arming them with the skills that people will need. We tag their skills so that people know how to find them. And then we kind of send them out for the opportunities that are available. So definitely join YGG. The entry point is our Discord, discord.gg/YGG, and talk to a lot of our community members that are here.
Do you think the opportunities are open even to people who've not had the right background?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's why we're very focused on the education part, because people have their skills that we want to convert into Web3 skills that people come in. So you don't necessarily have to be a founder. You can be a content creator. You can be a community manager. You can be an esports player. And that's really what I love about Web3.
Just bring the right attitude. Let's talk about digital asset ownership in the Web3 space. We all obviously kind of understand the underlying principle behind it, but what's the potential there? Is it ever going to go beyond just a handful of content creators, or is it really going to be the capital market of tomorrow, as some people are saying?
Yeah, so I think digital asset ownership, and this is actually Yat's favorite topic, and we're going to hear a lot more from him about this later. I think this is one of the most important inventions after the internet itself. It means that you can actually own part of the value that's being created in the internet. And a lot of this value, of course, has existed in stock or equity of companies like Google and Silicon Valley companies and the VCs that have invested in them. It hasn't been possible for ordinary people before to kind of own a piece of this value. And with digital asset ownership, then you can come into your favorite project, you can contribute to it, you can get paid in a token or an NFT that can represent ownership of that network and be able to participate in that upside. So that means not just an Uber driver that's getting paid from the hour. I may own tokens that represent being part of the network, for example. So if the network grows, the value of my assets can grow along with it. So I think that's a very important concept. Of course, we have to make sure that there is actual value behind that growth and not just speculation. But the idea that anyone in the world can own part of the network that they contribute to is a very, very, very profound one.
And then what is the key? Are you supposed to be holding on to that asset for a long time, for a long period of time?
Well, some people trade, some people hold for a long time. Myself, I haven't traded in at least 2 years, so I really identify more as a builder, so I don't really speculate on assets anymore. But yeah, it really depends on what people's skills are.
I think I've got time for one last question. So I wanted to ask you, what's next for YGG? You defined yourself as a global brand, so I want to know what the end vision is. How far do you want to take this, and what is the end goal in your mind?
Okay, so first of all, there's no end goal, but there is definitely kind of a roadmap and vision that we want to go after. We want to be the entry point of people around the world for Web3, to be onboarded via our communities, to have access to different opportunities and the opportunity to own assets and ownership in the opportunities that they want to do. So that means that I could be somewhere in rural Indonesia, in Venezuela, in Brazil, in Cabanatuan City, go into a game, or I can go into a Discord, and I'm presented with opportunities that are available. And as I get skills, I get tagged with those skills. Am I a content creator? Am I a community moderator? Am I a manager? And that enables you to have access to opportunities that may not be available to other people. And that kind of flattens the geo-arb for wages, because now it's not Because I'm in the Philippines, a task that is paid $10 an hour somewhere
Right.
gets paid $2 an hour here.
Right.
Now I can prove if I have this skill and I do this task, I get paid the same rate as anyone else. Someone in the US gets paid at the same rate as someone in the Philippines, as long as we have the same quality of output. I think this is very, very important kind of flattening of the wage gap between developing countries like Philippines and the rest of the world.
So there's not a secret market cap number in your mind that you're gunning towards.
No, no, no. Like the work is never done. And honestly, one of the worst things that you can do is to kind of tie your emotions or ego to like a price of something, because it goes up, it goes down, and you can't really let that distract you from your mission.
Fantastic. The work is never done, guys. Our time is up. Unfortunately, Gabby Dizon, everyone.
Maraming salamat.